Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, March 21st, 2016. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Knott.
Here.
Commissioner Milzarek.
Present.
Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Present.
Mayor Hopewell.
Present. For our opening ceremony this evening, we will have an invocation by Reverend Nathan Dannison of the First Congregational Church. I ask that you stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Reverend.
Good evening, Mayor. Brothers and sisters, let us pray. Holy and eternal God, your name we lift before all other names. You are the architect of creation, the spirit of life, and the Savior of all people. For some of us, Lord, this is a time of deep holiness. You have ridden into the Jerusalem of our lives, humble, penniless, to shouts of Hosanna amidst strife and persecution. Be present in these proceedings and give to all those gathered here holy wisdom, that they might do first your will in the world for the sake of your kingdom of peace and justice. Open our hearts this day to the refugee, to those who come to our city of all faiths and none, and all cultures. Continue to weave our lives together into a single garment of destiny. Loving God, our city is beset with grave challenges. The voices crying out from the margins remain unheard, and your good creation is groaning beneath the weight of our human avarice. We elected these people, Lord, because we believe their hearts are good, their vision noble, and their desires just. So empower them to bring us and our community into a time of common good. They cannot do it without your help. Remind them once more that small decisions have great consequences. Give them the courage to lead on behalf of our beloved valley of Kalamazoo. You made her beautiful, Lord. Now make her strong. These prayers we lift to you in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome, everyone. We have one proclamation this evening proclaiming Kalamazoo as a welcoming community. I think the Vice Mayor will handle this. I'll go to the podium. I'm not sure who might be here to receive it, but I'll see you at the podium.
Gulnar, you should come up. Matt, you should go up. Rabbi Matt, Gulnar, you guys should come up. Yes. Okay. Whereas the city of Kalamazoo has long been recognized as a hospitable and welcoming community where people, families, and institutions thrive, and the contributions of all are celebrated and valued. Residents of the city of Kalamazoo live up to our highest American values of acceptance and equality and treat newcomers with decency and respect, creating a vibrant community for all to live in. And whereas the city of Kalamazoo has long been home to immigrants from around the world who come seeking opportunity, stability, prosperity, and a better life for their families, the city of Kalamazoo is home to immigrants who come from regions such as the Middle East, Latin America, Africa, Europe, and Asia. The city's diverse communities consist of first and second generation immigrants as well as African Americans who have historically migrated from the southern United States. And whereas the Welcoming Kalamazoo initiative aims to build cooperation, respect, and compassion among all in our community, including immigrants and non-immigrants alike, endeavors to create a more inclusive society and seeks to embrace cultural, religious, and ethnic diversity, And whereas the City of Kalamazoo community remembers, honors, and values our immigrant and migrant roots and embraces the values of family, faith, and hard work, and whereas our city has greatly benefited from the addition of community members from all religious backgrounds, including those who have moved here in the past, who have become valued citizens, significantly contributing to the betterment of our community. And whereas our Muslim community, both native-born and immigrant, is an integral part of Kalamazoo's diversity, plurality, and of our growing multicultural identity, representing an increasingly important thread in the tapestry of American society. And whereas Muslims, inspired by their faith, give back every day as U.S. military personnel, police officers, doctors, nurses, caregivers, teachers, clergy, and in many other roles, contributing to the success of the United States and the city of Kalamazoo. And whereas there has been an increase in anti-Muslim and anti-immigration rhetoric among politicians and international media, with an increase of hate speech and violence targeting Muslim families and children across our nation, which is detrimental to all people who cherish safety, freedom, and liberty. And whereas such stereotyping and fear-mongering only leads to alienation and vicious, even deadly acts of intolerance, and whereas the city of Kalamazoo finds this anti-Muslim rhetoric and hate violence to be against American values of religious freedom and fairness, and contrary to the vision we hold as a nation that welcomes all people. And whereas Kalamazoo is a city that does not tolerate hate speech or hate crimes, and all of Kalamazoo's residents deserve to live in a safe environment, free of hate and discrimination. And whereas recent demands seeking a ban on Muslims entering this country are unconscionable, and if carried forward would constitute violations of the First and 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is tragically reminiscent of prior historic racial and religious profiling. And whereas this country was founded on principles of plurality, freedom of religion, and freedom from religious persecution, and whereas the city of Kalamazoo wishes to extend the traditional Islamic greeting of peace be upon you to all of its Muslim residents and visitors, therefore be it resolved, Kalamazoo and its city commissioners stand in support of our Muslim community and call for an end to the continued use of anti-Muslim and anti-immigration hate speech. And be it further resolved, Kalamazoo will continue to be a welcoming city to Muslims from all over the world, including immigrants and those fleeing from violence, persecution, and injustice. And be it further resolved that the city of Kalamazoo is affirmed as a place where all foreign-born and native-born Americans can live, work, and play together, to share in each other's customs and ideals, and appreciate and promote cultural diversity. We urge residents and stakeholders of the Kalamazoo community to join with the efforts and the spirits of the Welcoming Michigan Initiative and others to join in lifting up the city of Kalamazoo as a welcoming environment for all.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Cooney. My name is Susan Reed, and I'm Managing Attorney at the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center. We lead the Welcoming Michigan Initiative, and we look forward to working with the city going forward to make these beautiful words a reality every day in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I stand in this beautiful chamber, I notice above you the tablets with the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments we are all familiar with, but There are actually 613 commandments found in Torah. And of those 613 commandments, if you were to list them by category, the one with the most number regards how we are to treat our neighbor, how we are to treat those in our community who are in need of some help, how we are to treat the people who we may see as the other. And that is not as the other, but as our neighbor, as our brethren, as ourselves. So I want to thank this body for doing what we know this community embodies, which is welcoming our neighbors, showing truly in this resolution what we know to be true in our hearts, which is that we are all one. We are all together in this Kalamazoo community. So thank you.
Good evening. I am Gulnar Hussain, a member of the Muslim community. On behalf of the Muslim community, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Kalamazoo City Commissioners, especially Vice Mayor Cooney, who were willing to consider the adoption of this resolution supporting the Muslim community tonight. I would also like to thank the interfaith community of Kalamazoo, Isaac, and especially our Jewish and Christian community leaders and their entire congregations for championing this resolution tonight. Lastly, my heartfelt appreciation for all the allies who stand in support of the Muslim community and who advocate for the refugees coming to Kalamazoo from war-torn countries. Muslim Americans are not the first to be singled out in this country. The internment of Japanese Americans, the discrimination against Jews, Irish and Italian Americans, and the atrocities committed against Native American and African American community illustrate that we are unfortunately a nation which has had its blemishes when it comes to civil rights and the care of our own people. However, because of their resilience and the allies that stood with them, the Muslim community owes these groups sincere appreciation for their struggles to overcome discrimination and injustice. Thanks to them, we have come a long way as a nation when it comes to the care of all of America's inhabitants. The lessons we have learned from the past show us that we cannot allow history to repeat itself again and again. One of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, once said, "The care of human life and happiness is the only legitimate object of good government." Today, the Kalamazoo City Commission has the opportunity to prove once again that the care of human life includes creating an inclusive and pluralistic community. Now it is our turn to change the environment in our great city and to do our part to preserve the Constitution and promote the well-being of our entire community. Thank you once again.
I am Raylan Joyce, a longtime active member of the Kalamazoo Friends meeting, one of the co-sponsors of this resolution. I support this resolution as an immigrant, a retired college teacher, a Quaker, and a peace activist. An immigrant from the Philippines, I've grown and thrived in the welcoming and tolerant air of this area I've called home for 46 years. At Kalamazoo Valley Community College, where I taught for over 30 years, I appreciated the diverse student population. Many had come from other countries. Through our international studies program, I taught the value of diversity and intercultural communication, promoting awareness, respect, and acceptance of cultural differences. I'm also a Quaker, a member of the Religious Society of Friends. Because of our belief that there is that of God in every person, Quakers are historically known for our testimonies of peace, equality, and justice for all. Back in 2000, because Kalamazoo Friends wanted our youth to meet Muslim youth and learn about Islam, we invited members of the Kalamazoo Islamic Center to visit our meeting. Then the 9/11 tragedy struck. In the wake of 9/11, the group of youth and parents who came to visit that Sunday were shaken and worried. They later told us, but they were reassured by our welcome and friendship. When I retired from teaching in 2003, I joined a growing movement of peace activism in Kalamazoo. I was taught and inspired by many longtime peace activists I consider my mentors, many of whom are in the audience, some in the City Commission. Together, we worked with prominent and respected members of the Muslim community to create the Interfaith Coalition for Peace and Justice and the Kalamazoo Nonviolent Opponents of War. If I had not met the Muslim friends that I have today, my understanding of Islam would have been shallow and biased. My life would have been sadly diminished. Kalamazoo has greatly benefited from the actions, courage, tenacity, and commitment to peace and justice of the Muslims in our community. Once again, Muslims are being unjustly criticized and maligned. I call on the Kalamazoo City Commission, who have already approved this resolution, to strongly stand behind the Muslim community. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, we are now on item C, adoption of the formal agenda. You have that before you. Are there any changes? Hearing none, anyone in the audience wanting to comment on items under F, that's our consent agenda, that item will need to be moved to our regular agenda. If you have such an item, please indicate at this time. Seeing none, Communications Manager Ritzma.
Nothing beyond the calendar of upcoming events, Your Honor.
Thank you. The consent agenda, please.
We have the following 14 items for consideration this evening. First is the approval of a purchase order with Carrier and Gable for the improvement of traffic signals along Portage Road in an amount not to exceed $196,000. Next is the approval of a one-year contract extension with Western Michigan International for the purchase of Cummins engine parts in the amount not to exceed $207,250.49. Next is the approval of a month-to-month contract extension with Republic Services of Kalamazoo for bulk trash and recycling services in the amount of $255,110. Next is the approval of 5 cab and chassis from Tri-County International Trucks in the amount of $474,745. Next is the first reading of an ordinance to rezone the east 105 feet of 827 South Westnedge Avenue from Zone RM36 Residential Multi-Dwelling District to Zone CN1 Commercial Neighborhood District and scheduling a public hearing for April 4, 2016. Next is the approval of a resolution of intent to apply for annual transit financial assistance from the Michigan Department of Transportation for fiscal year 2017. Next is the approval of a resolution to decertify Lafayette Avenue from West Michigan to 337 feet south in accordance with Act 51 of Public Act 1951. Next is the adoption of a resolution setting a public hearing for April 4, 2016 to receive comments on the 2016 action plan as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Next is the approval of a service agreement between the City of Kalamazoo, the Kalamazoo County Transportation Authority, and Central County Transportation Authority, and the Transit Authority Board from January 1, 2016 through September 30, 2016. Next is the approval of the updated list of non-bargaining unit employees exempt from civil service protection. Next is the acceptance of a grant funding through the Kalamazoo Community Foundation in the amount of $50,000 to support the body-worn camera project. And then we have the following mayor reappointments to the following boards and commissions. First, to the Historic Preservation Commission, the reappointment of David Benak for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. David Brose to a term expiring March 31st, 2018. That's an extension. And the reappointment of David Corman to a term expiring on March 31, 2019. And then to the Retirement and Perpetual Care Investment Committees, Dean Berge for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. Sandy Docker for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. Jan Vanderclay for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. Joel Wittenberg for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. Then to the Planning Commission, Josh Cook for a term of expiring on March 31, 2019, and Derek Wisner for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. And then we have the approval of the following appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. First, the Building Board of Appeals, the reappointment of H. Charles Kiplinger for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. Lyndia Bruckbauer for a term expiring on March 31, 2018. Then to the Community Development Act Advisory Committee, Chris Umba for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. Sasha Acker for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. And finally, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, James Houston for a term expiring on March 31, 2019, and Reed Youngs for a term expiring on March 31, 2019. And finally, approval of the minutes from the City Commission meetings on February 1, February 29, and March 7, 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioners, the requested actions, a motion to approve items 1 through 14 and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion? Moved by Commissioner Knott. Support. Supported by Commissioner Anderson. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Mills-Ark.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. We are now at item J, adoption of a resolution in support of the mayor sending a letter to the governor and other state elected officials in regards to the city's opposition to House Bill 5232 and Senate Bill 720 pertaining to local historic districts. Anyone wanting to speak on this item, please step to the podium. This item only. Please give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve. Is there a motion?
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Knott, supported by Commissioner Mills-Ark. Is there discussion? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Mills-Ark.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cooney.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, I'm sorry, do you have a report this evening?
Just one item I want to highlight out of the city manager's report, and that's obviously next Sunday, this coming Sunday is Easter, and there'll be an egg hunt, the 19th annual egg hunt, at Homer Stryker Field on March 26th from 4 to 7 p.m. So encourage folks to show up to that for celebrate the Easter season.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mr. Attorney, do you have a report this evening? Thank you. We are now at citizens' comment. Any citizen wanting to comment on any item this evening, please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. You can sign in afterwards, certainly. I'd also like to remind the audience that we don't respond back to comments that are coming from the podium, and I ask that you refrain from demonstrating applause or disapproval or what have you. We have a lot of people, and we want to make sure everyone has their opportunity to be heard. So please respect these rules. Good evening, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Allison Kennedy, and I am so honored to be in this room with all of these beautiful, caring people. It feels really good. I am an excited voter of 240 Stewart Avenue, Apartment 1 in the Stewart neighborhood, and I'm an alum and current employee of Kalamazoo College, a co-founder and co-facilitator of Humans Beyond Boxes, volunteer with Michigan United Fair Chance for All team, and artist in the Park Trade Center building. For 4 years, I ran a weekly creative writing workshops with the Michigan Prisoner Reentry Initiative at a local probationer and parolee facility. Every week, I heard stories of resilient people, fantastic writers, excited to support themselves and heal. Often, I was told, "I like creative writing, Allison. The poems are great. And I also need a job." Often, I watched people return to prison because they were not welcomed back, because their criminal background was seen before their first name was heard. Thank you to the City Commission for banning the box in 2011. I am so proud to live here because of that. I'm so proud that there are over 30 people in our community who now have jobs as a result of something you did, we did together. Now, we believe we can do more so that ourselves and our loved ones with criminal backgrounds can support their families and support this very vibrant and beautiful community. No one deserves to be punished their whole life. No one deserves to be seen as disposable or only as their mistakes. That is not what Kalamazoo is about. In the next 15 minutes, we will hear from people of the north side, the south side, and east side of Kalamazoo, all coming together to ask that the fair chance policy be on the agenda for the next City Commission meeting on Monday, April 4th, and that you vote yes on it. To clarify, the Fair Chance for All policy would require that businesses that receive tax abatements from the city would not discriminate against folks with criminal backgrounds by first eliminating the box on the initial job application, and then not doing a criminal background check until after an in-person interview and conditional offer of employment, and that the crime not be considered, or that the relevance and the time passed since the crime be considered when hiring people, and if the crime is directly related to the tasks related to the job. We have been having these conversations together for years, and especially before August 2015 through November, and we can't wait longer. I'm so glad I just got to witness the signing of that resolution, and I think this could be a beautiful next step. Please welcome our next speakers with Fair Chance for All, Luke, Catrice, Matt, Ray, and Katira.
Thank you, ma'am. So just one more time, I'd ask that you refrain from showing applause or dissatisfaction with speakers and allow us to continue the meeting. Earlier, we allowed it because that was a celebration period that we have during proclamations. But again, I would ask that you respect the rules of the chambers as I would respect the rules of the house that you live in as well if I was visiting. Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight and to hear our voices. My name is Luke Kwiaczynski. I'm the Executive Director at Urban Alliance, and I know many of you, and you know that I am passionate about the marginalized members in our community. Instead of talking about what we're not doing, I want to talk a little bit about Kalamazoo and what we are doing. And I want to tell a short story to illustrate how awesome of a community Kalamazoo is. We had a graduate, or a student that came through our program a year and a half ago. He had served 16 years in state and federal prisons. He moved back to Kalamazoo hoping to restart. He spent 2 years homeless, looking for jobs. He applied to over 100 jobs without getting a phone call or an email or a desire for an interview. That's a pretty rough thing for somebody to go through. However, because Kalamazoo is awesome, and we are having conversations on this, he was able to get a job. And not only was he able to get a job, he was able to get promoted. He was able to buy a car. He now has an apartment in town. And his employer could not be happier with his performance at work and his conduct. I'm speaking to you tonight because I think Kalamazoo is doing a lot of things right. And I think Kalamazoo is a community that's willing to accept everybody and give people a shot. What I'm asking is that we continue to have this conversation, that we continue to keep this in front of us, because the last thing that we want is people in our awesome city to be without hope. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Catrice Brown. I live at 703 Charlotte Avenue. I'm currently a bachelor's of a student here at Western Michigan University. I'm also a member of Greater Faith Fellowship, Church of God in Christ, and I am a member of Humans Beyond Boxes. I'm also a registered and avid voter. During the course of my studies here at Western Michigan University, I've had the pleasure with working with with one of the most marginalized populations here in Kalamazoo. This population is most often referred to as ex-offenders. I've been blessed with the opportunity to get to know some of these individuals beyond the labels of felons and ex-offender that society forces them to live with well after their time has been served. I do not have time to name all the beautiful people that I've been blessed to work with individually, but I can say that none of which have been named felon or ex-offender. They have real names, like you and I. They have families and children, just like you and I. And they have dreams of being able to one day support those families and children, just like you and I. Their dreams can become a reality. And this can be done by giving individuals the opportunity to show who they are and not what they've been. We can also do this by giving individuals an opportunity to create a new path for themselves and their families, and we can do this through giving them sustainable income or employment, We'd like to thank you for banning the box in 2011. Because of that effort, there have been families who have been able to provide for them families in a way that they were not able to prior to finding employment. Here in Kalamazoo, we pride ourselves on equity and being leaders in equity. We here in Kalamazoo do not pride ourselves on discarding valuable members of society based on the outcome of a bad decision. That's why we want to ask you, the City Commission, to put the fair chance policy on the next city agenda meeting, city agenda, which is April 4th, Monday, and we also want you to vote yes on the fair chance policy. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, please. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Matt Stone. I live at 511 First Street in Charlotte, Michigan. I'm actually not a resident yet. I intend to move to Kalamazoo. And one of the reasons that I want to move to Kalamazoo is for my family and my children. I have a 4-year-old daughter who's going to be in kindergarten next year, and a 9-year-old son who will be in 5th grade. And I would like them to be able to take advantage of the Kalamazoo Promise. One thing that I find, though, is I have an extensive criminal record. I am currently a first-year master's level student at the School of Social Work at Western Michigan University. I'm a volunteer with the Urban Alliance as well as Michigan United, and I am a co-facilitator with Humans Beyond Boxes. I have a lot going on in the community with ex-offenders and others, and I myself am a criminal, ex-offender, I guess you'd say. For my family, my wife and I, we really love our children, and we really, really want to have the opportunity for them. We want to afford them every opportunity that there is. And one of the things that I've run into having a criminal record is I've not had a very good chances at finding good employment. And I don't think that anybody should have to spend $70,000 and 3 college degrees to redeem themselves from their criminal record. There are a lot of things that we could do, and I see a lot of progressive things going on in Kalamazoo. The Kalamazoo Promise is an awesome, and I think that is great. It's one of the best things I've ever heard of for kids, honestly. But we all know that it's not really enough, especially for the parents. If we want the parents to be able to take care of the kids so that the kids can grow up. I want to be able to take care of my kids so that my kids can grow up and graduate school. I want them to have everything that they need in their life so that they can do well in school, be happy and healthy, graduate, and then they can move into taking advantage of the promise. Again, we've all said before, we want to thank you for stepping up and banning the box in 2011. We know that that's made a huge impact on the community in a positive way. Kalamazoo does have a reputation for being the vanguard in equity in this community, and we want to thank you as well for that. And we want the City Commission to put the fair chance policy on the next open meeting agenda on Monday, April 4th, and vote yes on the fair chance policy.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to say good evening to all the City Commission committee members. My name is Ray Allman, and I live at 1202 Stockbridge Avenue. I just wish to share a little bit about myself. I'm a registered voter. I graduated out of the Momentum Community Program successfully, I might add. I also been a part of Restore Ministry. I'm a member of Bethany Reformed Church, and I am presently employed at Wright Coding Technology. So with that being said, I am an ex-offender myself, but I still can remember back when I was not. And there was this coworker who was. Now, in the beginning, I was not aware of this, but once the fact was known to me, fear gripped it and overwhelmed me, all because of my ignorance and fears of so many of the prison myth stories and much of the media hype as well. Now, I can actually reflect back on that period of time when I was too judgmental of others with background, never looking at the fact that the individual never disrespected me, threatened me, nor taken anything from me. So I've been on both sides of the spectrum. And now I really know what it feels like to be judged by your background and not by you being a person who can be loved, who wants to love. Let me repeat this over. Who can love and wants to be loved back in return. A person who has feelings, who hurts just like any and everyone else. So I wish to say thanks to you guys for banning the box over more than 5 years now. Kalamazoo has a reputation for being the vanguard in equity. Let's continue to be a place family have equity and opportunities. We want you, City Commission, to put the fair chance policy on the next City Commission meeting agenda, and we would very much appreciate if you all voted yes on the fair chance policy on Monday, April the 4th. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Good evening.
My name is Katira Smith. I live at 703 Charlotte Avenue. I am a student at Maple Street Magnet School for the Arts. I play basketball for the Kalamazoo Legends and Maple Street. I also play softball for Westwood Little League. I have a 30-year-old cousin named Jason. When Jason was younger, he made some bad choices, which caused him to spend some time in jail. This also caused my cousin to have 2 felony charges on his record. As time went on, my cousin had 3 kids. Before his first child was born, he tried to find a job, but he was not able to because of his past. As time went on, my cousin had a set of twins and still could not find a job, but he never stopped trying. In 2014, my cousin decided that he was no longer okay with not being able to provide for his kids. He decided to move away from Kalamazoo and his kids with the hopes of finding a fresh start. Within 2 weeks of living in another state, my cousin had 2 jobs. After 2 months of working, my cousin was able to send money to his kids' mother to buy all of their summer clothes. Just yesterday, my cousin flew to Michigan to get his kids and to take them on a vacation in Disney World. Although my family is proud of my cousin, we wish he could live closer to us and his kids. Thank you, City of Kalamazoo, for banning the box in 2011. This has made a difference for the families of the people who were able to find a job. We know that the City of Kalamazoo is ready to take the next step toward ending discrimination against families in our community. We want the families in our community to stay together and not be split up because one parent can't find a job. So we want you, the City Commission, to put the fair chance policy on the agenda for the next meeting on April 4th, 2016. And we want you to vote yes on the fair chance policy.
Thank you. Next, please.
Thank you from the Fair Chance for All team.
Thank you. Good evening.
Caitlin Martin, 609 Village. I'm totally on board with Fair Chance for All, but right now I'm speaking for myself about some frustrations I have with law enforcement in Kalamazoo. There has been an abundant discourse about building trust in this community circulated within the last year, and I honestly don't know how that trust is being built other than by talking about it. How is trust built when you continue to pull people over for seatbelt or taillight violations or whatever kind of manufactured excuse and then cry marijuana? Police are profiling and harassing residents on the north side every single day, so my questions are, who are you building trust with? Who are you building trust for? Wouldn't it be great to have a breakdown of which neighborhoods have the most patrols? Is that in your annual report, Chief Hadley? Because the last one available on your website is from 2010. I think it's 2010, but I can't really remember because they've been taken down since the new website was put up. I was told by Inspector Shannon Bagley last August that I would need to submit a FOIA for an annual report. This is the opposite of transparent. This should be public information. My friend's home was raided at night. There were 15 officers there on a suspected parole violation in her home. They went through her things. She's not on parole. Your officers harass homeless people on a regular basis. Your officers are physically assaulting minors. Your officers are sexually assaulting people under the pretext of searching for drugs. You either don't have a clue about what they're doing or you don't care. Neither of those scenarios build trust, neither are assuring, neither provide us with safety. And you can say, as I've heard you say, well, how can we know if people don't tell us? But how are people supposed to feel encouraged to tell you when in 2012, 35 complaints were filed and 4 were substantiated? In 2013, 32 complaints were filed and 0 were substantiated. How can people have faith in a process where the police investigate themselves? And this Citizens Review Board, handpicked by the city manager, it's bullshit. We need a citizen-elected review board in an election that is publicly funded. We need oversight of our police department, and we need better systems of accountability which aren't governed by the people being investigated. This is basic logic. There's been a lot of congratulations to law enforcement for stopping Jason Dalton from killing more people. I'm glad he was stopped. I'm also enraged that dispatch dismissed the phone call from the man who was virtually held hostage in the Uber car with him before he started shooting people. That's not responsible policing. That's not keeping us safe. Yet when so much as a firecracker goes off on Ada Street, you all show up full force. Who are you protecting? Who are you serving? Just recently, in the article about the new body cameras, which may or may not help, you were quoted as saying, "Officers make mistakes. We're not perfect. We're human." I'm glad that your officers have the luxury of being human. Why are Kalamazoo residents not granted the same allowance? Why are citizens of this city not being treated with the dignity that you're talking about earlier in this meeting and respect? Why are we not having our humanity recognized also?
Thank
Hello, I'm
evening.
George Magus. I would like to say I think it's a good thing that Mr. Hadley is having the officers with cameras. So I want to thank you. That creates some transparency in our police department. So I think you deserve that recognition on that. I have a friend that was, he's poor and he gets food stamps and he's been through the criminal system, and he had a raid at his house when they checked him for drugs, and they did not find any drugs. They took his 3 jars of peanut butter and went through them to find drugs, and with a police dog. And I said to him, well, is the police department going to replace your 3 jars of peanut butter? And he started laughing. And I said, well, they should go down to the, you're poor. You should have the police should replace your 3 jars of peanut butter. They should go down to Loaves and Fishes and get you 3 jars of peanut butter and give them back. That's like $3 a piece. That's $9 worth of peanut butter that this guy doesn't have now. And he has to wait a whole other month for food stamps to replace those 3 jars of peanut butter. I just don't think that's fair. When you talk to a lawyer, they say, let's say you're in a car crash or something happens, you have to replace the person's items in full, like it was before the accident. So you have $1,000 ruined to your car, that has to replace that whole $1,000 back. Why do the criminals or people that are innocent until proven guilty, why can't they be made in full and get their jar of peanut butter back? So, I do think that's very important. People need to feel that they are being respected, and especially when they're doing the right thing and they're not using drugs, they should be made full. So I think that needs to be thought about. We do compensate people if they have when you go down to the courthouse and it took time to drive down there and how many miles you get your mileage back. Well, why shouldn't people that are innocent be made back full on that, So the other thing is, I think we should have a dig downtown to get new buildings built. I said that earlier. And I think we should do that to try to get more buildings built downtown so we have a tax base. I think we need to start working on ideas to build a bigger tax base for Kalamazoo, because we're $2 million in the hole, and it's very important that we work on that. And I do think we have a very nice city, but it's hard, I know. So have a good day.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Alfonso Harris. I live at 1005 Interfaith Boulevard in Kalamazoo. I'd like to point out something. I'm glad to hear about the Muslims being honored today. I have a late uncle that was a Muslim and also an ex-offender, so the things I've heard tonight is very encouraging to me, as well as several uncles that were ex-offenders. But what I'd like to talk about tonight is that there is a Transgender Day of Visibility, which is going to be March 31st. This was started in 2009 by trans activist Rachel Crandall, because the only day that was honoring transgender people was the Day of Remembrance, which was for transgender people that were murdered. And my request would be, just like we were talking about the Muslims and we were talking about the ex-offenders, and there's some intersection because some Muslims are trans, some ex-offenders are trans, that people that are in a position to hire, that they would hire people regardless of their sexual minority status, regardless of their religious status, and regardless of their criminal background. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Tim Graham, and I am a citizen of the city. I was an attendee at today's DDA board meeting this afternoon, at which they presented a draft of the 5-year transportation, parking, and mobility plan. And it was unanimously approved by to be submitted to the City Commission by that force. I want to alert you that it's coming. I think it's very ill-prepared despite multiple revisions. I also think that 3 of the DDA board members made very logical questioning of its underlying assumptions and yet voted for it anyway. The purpose of the feedback system, which most of these people here I hope become part of, is critical consciousness and questioning, and that includes citizen feedback. And the purpose of feedback is to learn and grow and continuously improve. That is a prerequisite for change. Lansing and DC is broken. They're paralyzed, and they're stuck because they don't learn and they don't have feedback systems. That's why we have citizens in a democracy. With regard to this transportation, parking, and mobility plan, I have 4 questions that I asked you to consider. First, the purpose of a TIF district. I think we've lost direction as to what its purpose is. Secondly, the future of DKI, their organizational structure and their design, their focus and their vision, in the context of whole systems thinking instead of fragmented, we need to consolidate our efforts. The county, the city, and the 23 government jurisdictions all have economic development departments, and we have no cross-border dialogue. The woman very eloquently talked earlier about dialogue. I believe the only way we're going to solve our problems is with collective dialogue, which we don't have in this city. You may think we do, but we don't. We may have conversation, we may have communication, and we may have connectivity, but we often don't have that either. Should DKI be in the parking business? They don't have the money, they don't have the human resources, and they don't have the expertise. So why do we not privatize as the Blue Ribbon Task Force, or certainly compare privatization with a 5-year plan that's really a 1-year plan with 10-year cash flows? And the 10-year cash flows purport to finance the vision, which is nothing more than the renovation of a dilapidated system, not a 21st century parking operating system. I think it's wasted money, frankly. We saw an eloquently presented vision by DKI, but no money, and not even part of their plan. And the city manager's office is studying privatization separate from DKI and separate from the task force. This separation and top-down thinking is not going to get us where we need to go. I've been in many places, and I can show you many failures to prove it. And the last and most important thing is the future vision of the city's local economy. We need to have 21st century building blocks. The Blue Ribbon defaulted on that purview, and that's a necessary element, that future vision, to any income tax. It's a future vision tool to the equitable distribution of the tax burden. Non-resident workers and nonprofits pay nothing, and an impact analysis on the unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Stevens. I wanted to, I am not a resident of Kalamazoo, but I was for a long time, so I'll keep it brief. I wanted to thank my students from Western Michigan University School of Social Work that were so eager to come here tonight. It was hear or listen to me talk, so I think that it was, but it was very moving to see what we saw tonight and to be involved in that. It's an advanced cultural and ethnic relations class. And so I thank the City Commission for taking its stance. Also, I applaud the individuals with the band The Box, and also commend the Commission for having the forward thinking to look at ways to restore people as full citizens in our society. And I appreciate that. Thank you. I also want to thank Rakaya, that is our youngest member of our class, that is here with us, because she is here quite often, and it's inspiring to see. Thank you for coming. So thank you again for the work that you're doing for the city, a city that I've had lived in for the majority of my life and have been involved with for the past 40 some odd years. But thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please. Anyone else? Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Dana Underwood. I'm a resident of the Stewart neighborhood. And I just, as the discussion of potential income tax is looming, I just wanted to give you my perspective on something that hasn't really been discussed before, I don't think. And that is the toll that all of the cuts that were made has taken on the city staff, especially. I'll call them frontline staff. And those are the people that when I go to pay my water bill, when I go to pay my tax bill, when I have a question about zoning or something that I call. And I'm the kind of person who, when I have an exchange with somebody and it might be unpleasant, my first thought is, what could be another reason why I'm having an unpleasant exchange? And let me give you a specific example. So I was talking to somebody. I'm a neighborhood representative, and there's a possibility that funding of the neighborhoods might go away, might be drastically reduced. And I said, well, what if our neighborhood didn't request any funding? And the response was, well, then I wouldn't have to deal with you. And my initial instinct was, ugh, that does not sound like something I want, a city staff to say. And then I thought, though, okay, if I'm an overworked city employee and I have more things on my calendar to do than I have hours in the day to do them, and I have people calling me and asking me things that are not in my job, they might be in my job now, but they didn't used to be in my job, and I'm just overwhelmed, then when somebody says, essentially, I'm going to take something off your plate, of course they would say, well, okay, then I've got other things to do. I've got other things, and I wouldn't have to deal with you. So that is the way that I took that response as, wow, okay, maybe I'll catch up. Maybe I'll get on top of what I need to get on top of. And I've had several similar experiences. On the other hand, I have to say, every time that I have had to come to pay my taxes, I have been very impressed with the people, the frontline people in that office. I have seen them deal with people who are very angry about their taxes, are very angry about why their taxes are so high, how they got behind, how they don't have to pay them here, now they have to go to the county, how the records they've paid them at the county, but it's still online and it says that they owe taxes in the city, and so the bank is still calling them and threatening to execute their mortgage. And they deal with it so well. And I feel embarrassed because I don't know their names, even though I see them whenever I go down there. They do an excellent job. So I just want to bring that to your attention, that all of the cuts had a drastic effect, I believe, on the city staff and the jobs that they're asked to perform and the conditions under which they're asked to perform them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm not usually speaking, but there's a Michael Moore.
Ma'am, could we have your name and whether you live within the city?
I'm Bonnie Lorlita, and I live in Vicksburg, but I work at Western. Michael Moore they're holding a meeting at Miller Auditorium. Michael Moore, It's Only Hurts When I Laugh, April 6, 2016, 7:30. Flint's Water, disinvestment in communities, and getting to a future that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wanting to address the commission? Hearing none, we are now at commissioners' comments. Commissioner Milzarek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank everyone who came out tonight, spoke passionately about a variety of issues and concerns they had. thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Urban?
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. I too am heartened by seeing so many of you in the audience, and I just want to say that I'm determined to have something come of your efforts. I want this city to have all of its members live up to its potential, and I think it will take longer than we'd hope for to have this happen, but I don't want you to get discouraged. A thing that I've learned in the work I've done is in community organizing as a member of ISAC is if you're going to be patient, you better be determined. And if you're going to be determined, well, determination and patience go together. That's the main thing. So feel free to come down here as often as you need to, and in as big a number as you need to keep the issue before us. Because it probably took something like this to get the ban the box thing done 5 years ago. I don't know if it's going to be, it might be easier this time, but also it's a little more complicated this time because we're dealing with parties that aren't strictly the city. I'm glad to see you, and I wish you the best. Another topic I wanted to just address is I was glad to hear Ms. Underwood say what she did about city employees. It's very clear that unless you're dealing regularly with the city, you can think perhaps that the city is doing just as well as it always has with much less money than it had. But those of us who work regularly with the city, who have to deal with the city regularly on some matter or other, know that we're struggling with a much reduced manpower and much loss of institutional knowledge. And the people who are left are learning fast, but it's hard. We have a chance in the next probably in the term of this commission, to start to do something that can maybe turn that around. And I hope that all of you and all of your friends will come down to cheer us on with that effort as well. And I'm talking about improving our revenue situation. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Knott?
Thank you. Sorry for my voice. I too want to thank those of you that turned out tonight, but especially those of you that were brave enough to come up to the podium and share your personal stories. That takes quite a bit. You know, every day I have to remind myself, the mantra that I tell myself is an Oscar Wilde quote, which is, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. I too remember the days before I had to check the box, and I know all too well the fear and anxiety that goes into looking for a job knowing that you have to check that box. And as a commission and as an administration, lately we've been talking a lot about vision, Imagine Kalamazoo, the Vision 2025, and people will ask me, what is my vision for this great community? And that vision is that we are measured by our sum total accomplishments, and not by the one mistake that we may have made years ago in our past when we were broken. And so I will continue to work with my colleagues to make sure that we are creating a culture to pass a fair chance policy, but not just here in Kalamazoo. We need to be working with our colleagues in Portage and in the townships and the counties so that everybody in our great community has access to jobs and employment. It's the right thing to do for our community, not because I was a fair chance candidate, not because I have to check the box myself, but because this is the only way in which families, individuals, and our community is going to be healthy. Thank you.
Yeah, come on, everybody. All right. Many ways to skin the cat. Commissioner Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to start off and say it is so amazing to see so many people that I know and love and respect out here in the audience. This room has been a little bit lonely, and so it's so wonderful to see you all here. I'm going to talk probably too long tonight, and my colleagues may be a little bit annoyed with me, but I have a lot that I want to say. I want to start off and just say to you, Chief Hadley, I would be interested in a breakdown of patrols by neighborhood. I don't think that would be asking for too much, and I'd love to meet with folks to talk about what that would look like. I have thought about this before prior to being a commissioner and have not been able to bring it up yet, but since it has been brought up tonight, I am interested in just what it would take to create a citizen elected review board, and I don't know what that process is, or you know, what the legal issues may be, but so if somebody could maybe offer me some insight into that, that would be amazing. I spent the weekend with Nobel Peace Laureate Jody Williams, longtime radical activist, and also almost 200 young people, middle schoolers and high schoolers from our city and other places, excited about organizing, excited about activism, excited about social justice. And so I am starting my day Monday so full based on spending the weekend with these incredible young people. And I would be remiss if I spent the weekend encouraging them to find their social justice activist self, if I could not also continue to do that from this side of the dais as opposed to that side. There was a comment made or a quote referred to, and I don't have all the notes, but what stuck with me, what I wrote down, care of human life. And that's what tonight is about. That's what our work is about. Mayor, I fully respect and adore you. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, though, and say that this is not our house. This is their house. And so I feel very strongly that we are the visitors in this room, right? And we are here because of your support. And so I greatly appreciate that. This is what democracy looks like. And I love our democracy. I'm also going to share a personal story. I grew up with 4 brothers and a sister. The vast majority of them struggled with all kinds of issues, from drug addiction to mental illness to incarceration. I have a brother who I have since lost, who spent some time in prison and came home and was never, ever the same. I have another brother who attempted to change his life and go from criminal activity to living, what we would say legitly, right? And ran out of patience and committed suicide just over a year ago. This individual was one of the most important people in my life. And so I say that to say that I think it is fair that everybody in this room has run out of patience, because these are real lives being affected. And so given that most of us made the commitment to the Fair Chance for All resolution while we were campaigning, I too am growing a little short on patience. I think that I know that I'm a newer commissioner, and so I have a lot of that, sort of freshman energy, right? But I think we can move on this, and I think we can move quickly on this. And I do not think it's fair, and this has come up, I know it didn't come up tonight, but it's come up at some other meetings that I was at, where, ex-offenders were told, well, we've got all these resources, why aren't you using them, right? And to me, we are not doing our jobs if we're putting the responsibility on ex-offenders. The responsibility is on us. The responsibility is on us to be welcoming our neighbors and our citizens home. That's our job. We, as a city, have done a lot. We've done a lot, but we can do so much more. I wish I mean, even this to me is not enough. I wish we could do even more than that, but our hands are tied by the state, so I guess hopefully we take this fight to the state after the city. Jody Williams said something to me yesterday, and I talked about the sort of place that I've been in since I've been on this commission, because I was the activist that would stand
over on that side. And I can assure you the pressure to speak is much more intense on this side than on that side. And that's really hard. And so struggling with how I marry, my really strong convictions when it comes to social justice with this job and my responsibility as a commissioner. And she, said to me that it is so important to have folks on both sides. It is so important to have representation and folks who want to fight on both sides. And that's what we have, right? Like, election day, we won that fight. That's what we have up here. We have representation on this side and that side. We all want to do the right thing. So let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to actually give Clyde an opportunity because I know that a proposal came to us recently at Administrative Committee, and there was some discussion about looking at the proposal that came to us, and perhaps looking at more fully crafting it for the city of Kalamazoo. And our city attorney was going to take that and do some work on it. And I know there were some dates talked about tonight, but would you care to comment on what you think the time frame might be? Would that
So,
be-
Commissioner, before he does that, I leaned over to him and asked him when he received the item, because we vet things through the city attorney, as many people do out there, and he received it Friday. So to be clear on that, that's what he's saying. He received the new wording on Friday of the changes that were made from when we received it before. He received it at administrative committee meeting. Those of us that were at the administrative committee meeting, that's when we saw it as well. So just being clear that this is not something that has, in this draft, been in his hands for weeks. Just wanting to make sure that's clear. Mr. Attorney?
Thank you, Mayor. To turn things around and get it on the next agenda is somewhat problematic. Under our rules, we have to get that stuff in 10 days before the actual commission meeting, and 10 days would be Friday of this week. That's Good Friday. The city's offices aren't open, and so that leaves Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tomorrow I'm in Lansing all day to moderate a municipal attorneys seminar, so that leaves Wednesday and Thursday. And it's not as easy as one would think. There's a lot of concern I have about some of the terms, how they should be defined, and how broad it is. The easy thing probably is the issue regarding tax abatements and the like. That's probably fairly easy to do. When we're talking about our contracts, that is a little more problematic. Every time we use a credit card, that's a contract, technically. And I don't know whether or not Lowe's, for instance, when we need something from, somebody's out in the field and needs something now, whether they're going to do that. I know other communities have adopted these policies, but they haven't adopted a blanket policy. There have been exceptions to those policies. For instance, if you're dealing with the disabled, with youth, usually you're going to be permitted to do a background check before you offer a job to somebody who's going to be dealing with a potentially at-risk population. Again, if we're dealing with a bank, they're subject to federal rules. They're probably exempt, and I know that some communities have exempted those type of organizations from the reach of the policy. So I'd like to kind of get into that and explore what other communities have done and how they've dealt with some of the exceptions. I know some communities also have exempted small businesses, or they've said this is only effective for contracts of a certain amount, or if you do a certain amount of business with a concern, then this policy will kick in. So some of those things I'd like to explore and vet with the commission so that you have an opportunity to review it, think about it, before it just hits you cold 2 weeks from now. So I would be looking at probably the first or second meeting in May. That would give me basically the month of April to do some of that legal research and get something off to you so you could review it before you actually have to look at it and act on it at a commission meeting.
Any other comments, Commissioner? Vice Mayor Cooney?
Well, I think this was a great night for the city of Kalamazoo. I think by your presence, it was a wonderful affirmation of the worth and dignity of every person. I think the solidarity that our people showed with the Muslims and with immigrants and with all people who are in need is great. And I want to commend the people that came here to talk about fair chance for all, because we need you to come and stand and force this issue on the public agenda, because it can get lost. We're dealing with a lot of different things, but this is so important. I have the privilege of every week meeting with a group of ex-offenders at a church, Seasons of Change Church. They call themselves Men of Change. These are people who are ex-offenders who have made it. Now they're back and they've got a job and they're okay. And they want to reach out to others who are coming back because they know what they've gone through. So we want to be a welcoming community. And to be a welcoming community means that we have to reach out to these ex-offenders who are coming back and have such a struggle. And I'm sure that every single person up here wants to do everything they can to be that welcoming community, and that's what we're going to try to do.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well said. So let me do a couple quick things. First, in regards to the visitor's comment, it was a mistake in regards to what I was saying, and I think pretty much people have heard me say just the opposite, so I'm sure there's an understanding of that. But to be clear, that we're the guardians of your house. So whether it's the caretaker or renters, and so there's certain rules that we have within these chambers, and we can certainly, because of you being caretakers, change any rules. My intent was to inform you of the rules. I think that was pretty clear. I'm not silly enough to believe that I own this place, because I don't. And someday, God willing, I will have the opportunity to have someone else sitting in this seat, because no one should sit here forever. But I'm certainly honored to have the seat as it is now. So, I mean, so as a caretaker, this building gets locked sometimes. Though you're the owner, you can't just come in the building when it's locked. These folks have offices. Though you're the owner, you can't just walk into folks' offices. That's just how it typically works. So in regards to the rules is that we typically allow people to say what they want to say and allow the next person to say what they want to say without disruption. However, I love this. But that's a great way to recognize someone without being too disruptive, I guess. I needed to say that just to make sure there was clarity in what my intent, so I'm sorry if I misspoke. Secondly is that I'm glad you're all here. The Vice Mayor said it the best. We have been working on multiple things regarding how this community is accepting, welcoming, and supporting individuals. Everything from a human rights ordinance that was passed many years ago by citizens and put on the ballot by this commission. Everything from a different policy related to tax abatements that went from 12 years to 6 years so that we could get your return on an investment back to you as citizens. Banning the box in 2011, our new efforts in regards to public safety and our efforts to get local individuals on our department, this is the work. Not everything moves as quickly as we want, and it's been only 4 months since an election where we're dealing with a budget that is challenged, and we're trying to figure out that, because let me tell you, there won't be tax abatement policies or what have you if someone else is up here running the show and not supporting democracy. And those are the things that are on the plate. You heard a number of them. Typically, Commissioner Anderson goes through our consent agenda and talks about the items and what they mean. All of that is the work of this city every single day. And as you also saw, diverse thoughts on what we should be working on. Deal with the law enforcement folks. We have transgender folks we have to deal with. Figure out the parking. I mean, that's all the work, all of that. And we'll get it done, but there is a level of patience, expectations, encouragement, all of those things. It all is the work. And we have certain guides that help us not stumble over ourselves. One that knows more about the law than any of us put together and will probably ever learn. An administrator who is well-seasoned and understands how to run a city. And no perfection here tonight. But I'm glad you're here. I think you will find that there will, most likely, if I read my colleagues real well, and if I have anything to do with it, we are going to pass an opportunity to deal with fair chance, but we're also going to do it in a way, in a manner, that this body works. Typically, we don't surprise folks with things. We try not to do that political stuff that sometimes, you've seen it a lot over the last few months. We tend to work together. We tend to talk to each other and argue and behind the scenes and sometimes on the dais, but typically have those discussions and try to come up with what we think is the best for our community, for our city, knowing that we all have a whole bunch of diverse individuals sitting up here. So I would say stay tuned. I wouldn't expect April 4th. I'm just telling you. I wouldn't expect that. I'm not sure I'm here, so I really don't want it to happen without me being here. But that can still happen. But we've got to depend on these experts to help us do the right thing for all of our citizens and hold up to our responsibility. With that, we are adjourned.
They lose food, and then that should be replaced. Well, that too, but I mean, they should replace the food. Because those are from food stamps, they don't have that much. It's not fair to lose the peanut butter.
Haters or something, trying to attack you.